let's do this. So my name is Mark Vanderwerp, and this is Ruth. And so Ruth is actually technically the Macomb Event Supervisor. I just happen to be the guy who created the event, so that's why I'm here too. So this is, did anyone have anything to do with the Don't Bug Me event last year? Okay, good, half a year or so. This is, is that event. This is the next generation, so to speak. So the rules have changed fairly significantly, so pay attention, stay awake. And we'll kind of just run through the new event, and then hopefully give you plenty of time for questions. And then I do have a couple of samples. So one of the biggest change about the event this year is that an actual arthropod specimen collection has to be amassed and turned in at the time of the tournament by the students. And so there's two options. You know, it can either be a collection of photographs, or it can be actual physical specimens that were collected and mounted on a pin and put in a box. And so I realized these are probably going to be new skills for a lot of people, so we just wanted to quick do a little pinning demonstration in case anyone wanted to see that. But let's go through the program first. I see some people have it printed out. So on the website, you can download this. There's a study guide. This is the material I put together for the event. There's a lot of links in this document to other websites and that kind of thing. It's only about a 15-page document, so obviously the event is going to have a little bit broader scope than that. But a lot of the core content is right here at your fingertips. Just go to the Science Olympiad website and download it. Does everyone know how to do that? Nothing new, right? Also, I don't know if they're up yet, but there's two other little handouts that are supposed to be posted to the website. Yeah. You're nodding yes, they're there now. So one of these is about insect collection techniques. This is going to be a good one to look at. I'm not intending making a lot of this information be on the test, but just as far as finding specimens to include in the collection, this is going to be a helpful document. So obviously we're kind of in the middle of winter right now, and you don't see arthropods crawling all over the place, right? But there are still places you can find them, and there are still some things you can do. So for instance, if you know, we tend to think everything just kind of dies off in the winter, but that's totally untrue, right? It's all still here. It's kind of waiting for spring, and then things come out again. So there's some ways you can trick things. You can take things that arthropods live in, like leaf litter, like dead logs. You can bring that inside into a heated room like this, put it in a glass fish aquarium or a plastic bag, and bugs will come out of it. So that's one kind of a technique you can use to find some arthropods this time of year. And there's some other ideas in that manual. And the other little, these are both taken from 4-H, by the way. The other little manual is strictly about mounting, pinning specimens. So if your teams are going to be doing the photographic collection instead of the pin specimen collection, you would not need to look at this. This is only if you're doing a pin specimen collection. Am I making any sense to anyone? Okay, all right. Yes?
Is the scoring going to be different if they come in with photos versus actual specimens mounted?
No. The same rules will apply as far as how they're graded. So essentially what we're looking for is, okay, so let me back up a second. So one of the reasons that this event was redesigned is because I wanted to make it a little more exciting for the students, right? So I'm an entomologist, and the best thing about bugs is getting out, finding them, collecting them, observing their habits, seeing where they live. And you don't just want to bury yourself in a field guide and kind of study and regurgitate information. How boring is that? That's terrible, right? So part of the goal of the insect collection is to get people outside, finding out what bugs are doing right in their neighborhood or in their backyard. So to that end, I mean, if people would rather take photographs of the specimens they find or pin them, it doesn't matter to me. The end result is the same.
Or does it have to be one or the other?
It has to be one or the other. Combinations would get pretty messy.
So given that, is it that we find some specimens, like incidents,
Can you use for example?
Sure.
If it's dead, but still in its environment that we found it, we can take pictures of those, or does it have to be live specimens?
You know, live is obviously better. It's more ideal, but you know, if all you can find is a dead one, that works. I will say, just my personal preference, if I were a student competing in this competition, I think I would rather do a pinned specimen collection. Taking good macro photographs of little itty bitty bugs is pretty tough. So I am a insect photographer too. I do both. I collect bugs. I take pictures of bugs. I'm all things bugs. Taking a good picture of insects is way tougher and more costly than just grabbing it and putting a pin through it. Just FYI. You can do it either way, but if you want to take good macro photographs, really you got to invest a couple $1,000 in camera equipment. You can't just take an iPhone and get a good picture of it in hand. In most cases, it will just be a little blurry blob, and not going to give. We won't give credit for things that you can hardly tell what they are.
Yeah, that was one of my other questions. Is there a way we can submit our photos ahead of time to see if they're sufficient or if they would be disqualified?
You should write that question. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an answer for that. This is that's the great thing about being a guinea pig, right? Yeah.
If you submitted it to somebody online, it's just to ask, is this good enough, or it would be?
What I would suggest, so the litmus test for is the specimen good enough is essentially can you identify it, and I am just totally disjointed here. You can tell this is the first time we've talked about this event. So in the study guide, there's links to a number of things. Let's see, this is on the first couple of pages. One of the links you're going to want to focus on is a key. So on the second page, list of concepts to study, third bullet point down, how to use identification keys, and there's a link. And this is a key to the different orders of insects. If you have a photo of a specimen and you can't run it through that key, it's not good enough. And in some cases, you might need multiple photos to really have everything in focus, because the further in you zoom, the cameraman will tell you that. Where'd our camera guy go? Right? The closer in you get to something, the narrower that field of view gets, and things get blurry and out of focus pretty fast. Yeah?
Another option with regards to the photography check might be there's a anthropology center through MSU, and they, in a lot of cases, do free public inquiry. So if you send them a photo, they'll tell you what it is usually. It's actually how they test some of their grass.
Yeah, probably some of their extension stuff. That is not the goal of this.
Just so you can photo is identifiable.
Yeah. Well, in most cases, extension people will give you an identification, but they may just say, I think it's this. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good way to vet a photo. I think the best way is if you have a picture, you can see the antennae, you can see the legs, you can see how many segments it has. If the key is asking for segmentation, then it's good. But like I say, don't kill yourself trying to take good photos. Just grab the bug, stick a pin through it. There's the Science Olympiad is actually selling insect pins, so you don't have to go online and track them down. I think they want $10 for a pack of 100. 100 pins should be plenty to get you through this event. So that's pretty cost effective. Another one of the reasons for redesigning this event, I know some of the parents grumbled a little bit about having to buy, all this different material for all the different events. So one of the benefits of having kind of the study guide and a web-based information gathering is that it's pretty much cheap. So you can get through this event if you just have an internet connection and a printer. So you don't have to spend the $40 on the study guide like you did in past years. So $10 on pins, no big deal, right? Yeah.
The study guide said that the bugs have to be native to the Midwest.
Right.
And I'm wondering, on spring break, when my daughter and I go to visit Grandma and Grandpa in Missouri, are we able to bug hunt on their land? Or should this just be from our areas?
A lot of the things that they have in Missouri, we have here. I mean, it's not 100% overlap, but yeah, I mean, the goal of that really, and you have to remember that, people like us are going to be grading these things. Excuse me, and we certainly don't know every single species that's around and exactly what the range is. the goal is more, if we see like big crazy bugs from Africa that people are including pictures of in their collection, it's like, yeah, we know something's up, you're not getting credit for that. But you know, if you have something that only occurs, you know, from Missouri to Ohio, it doesn't come into Michigan.
Okay, so
We're
it
not
has to
gonna know
be,
that.
it
So-
has to be something that, if we find something there, it has to be something that is native to here as well.
That's the idea. It's
Okay.
supposed, again, the focus here was to get people outside learning about bugs.
Sure.
And so if you're in, you know, if you're outside in Missouri learning about bugs, the intent has still been followed. Now, if you have like a little vacation spot in Costa Rica that you go to, that's going to change things. Yeah.
So I know that you said there's the pamphlet on this that we can get online, but in the past, maybe there's a quick answer you can come. In the past, when I've tried to pin bugs, I have crushed my specimens horribly. I haven't been able to get the pin through them without messing them up. Is there a way to like soften them
Oh,
so
yeah.
that the pin goes through?
Yep.
And is that in there?
So, so again, in the, you're going to want to take a look at this manual. I believe this talks about relaxing specimens. So if you find bugs that are dead and dried out and crispy, and you try to put a pin through them, they kind of disintegrate, dust to dust kind of thing, right? But you can, there are ways to relax those, and it can be as simple as actually boiling water if it's some harder bodied stuff and putting it in there for a couple minutes, and then it's soft enough to pin. So those strategies are available. Another thing you can do is called pointing, and I have an example. Again, I'm just kind of going in all sorts of orders here. Let's talk about specimens right now. So, the goal is not to have like spectacular specimens. The goal is just to collect a diversity of things in your area and mount them. So, you can, some of the real little stuff you find, you're not going to be able to put a pin through it. Here's an example. You probably can't even see that there's a specimen on there. It just looks like a little white triangle of paper. That's called a point. So you can take a little piece of cardstock, cut a little triangle out, put a tiny dab of glue on the end, touch it to your specimen. There you go. You don't have to actually run the pin through your fruit fly, so to speak, right? So there are techniques for smaller things like ants and that kind of thing. The bigger stuff, obviously, you can put a pin through. So here's an example. These are all beetles. Most of them came from Michigan, but there are some specimens in here that clearly did not. So there's some like big cool Indonesian stuff in there, because hey, they have the best stag beetles around, right? So this is just an example of a box of bugs I put together. These are all beetles. This, even though it's an excellent collection, if I can pat myself on the back, would be a terrible collection for this event. Some of the specimens wouldn't count because they're not local. The maximum score they can get on the test is at 92 points, which is just whatever, kind of a random number. That's how it worked out. And that counts for 30% of the total score. And so there's different ways you can get to 92 points. So, and again, it's in the rules. So they get 1 point for every specimen, up to 30 specimens.
Up to 30.
So you can get 30 points. Just if you have 30 of anything, you got 30 points. And then for each class you find, you get an extra 3 points. And so like a spider, that would be in the class Arachnida, that'd be a class. You find an ant, that's an insect, class Insecta. So you've got 2 different classes there. So that's 6 more points. That kind of, 6 more points. And then you also get 5 additional points for each new order of insect that you collect. And so there's a million different ways to get to 92 points, but that's the way it works. And yes, one specimen can count multiple times. So the first thing you collect is going to count for a new class. If it's an insect, a new order, plus the 1 point for the specimen. So the first thing you collect, if it's an insect, is worth 9 points. Are you doing the math right?
Yes.
You know when you're in front of a group of people, your IQ plummets. So tell me if I say anything stupid. Was there another question? Yeah.
Yeah, does it have to be a perfect specimen? Because like my kid's nana sent him a bag of moth and he lost a weight. But I'm sure you don't want it super glued back on. But
That's what entomologists do.
why?
Glue back
That will work? Or?
It's not ideal, all right? So, but again, the goal of this wasn't to have everyone turning in perfect museum specimens. The goal was just to get different things and see what's around you. So it would still count, but where it would count against you is if there's a tiebreaker. The criteria for the tiebreaker is the quality of the insect collection. So if you have a bunch of beaten up specimens, missing legs and wings and heads, and yeah, that will kill you in a tiebreaker. Yeah.
Just going on the tiebreaker premise there, that a pin submission is probably going to bode well to a pitcher submission in that situation.
I'm not sure I understand. It's
well, what I'm saying is that in the language of what it says, nicely mounted specimens, not broken, beaten up, clear labels, proper identification are going to score better in a tiebreaker situation.
right.
So I'm just saying, you said it's already going to be difficult to make pictures, and really kind of pushing towards pinning everything.
I'm trying to give that impression to make it easier, but certainly there should be no handicap. We're certainly going to try to be as unbiased as possible, whether it's photos or specimens. So you can take pictures of specimens that are beaten up. So if you're finding dead millipedes in your basement, they'll probably be a little beaten up. Similarly, if you put the dead millipede in your collection, it'll still be beaten up. But if you find a live millipede to photograph or to pin, it's obviously going to look a little bit better. So it's the same. It's the same either way. You can take pictures of really good-looking bugs, and you can take pictures of dead, ground-up bugs. Yeah.
Did you talk about documenting the photograph? Although I know you mentioned it in the study guide.
Yeah. Good point. So so anytime you collect a specimen, if it's just a bug on a pin, it's completely worthless scientifically. So you need to know where it came from, when it was captured, ideally what it was doing when it was captured, and who caught it. So if there's any questions, you know who to go to. That kind of an idea. So this is. I mean, there is scientific worth in a bug collection. It's not just what nerdy entomologists do to fill their time. So let me flip to that page here. So if anyone doesn't have the study guide yet, there's 2 pages talking specifically about the collection. And so there's, what are we asking for? 4 things here to be on the label. The date collected, the location collected, and that includes the state, county, and closest city. The brief behavior habits observed during the collection. So let's go back to that dead millipede in the basement. You would, for the date collected, it would be whenever you found it. For the location, it would be where the house is, you know, city, state, county. Behavior, I guess in this case, would be crawled into the basement and died. And then the name of the collector would be whoever found it. And so again, we don't want grandmas like sending a bunch of bugs over, so the name of the collector should always be someone on the team. That's the goal. We don't want dad going out and collecting bugs or something like that. Okay, let me focus on this a little bit more here and see it, because I know the collection's brand new, so there's probably going to be lots of questions on that, but there's probably some other things we should cover here. How are we doing on time? We're doing all right. There's a whole section in here on using identification keys, so remember there is that link that you can use to identify the specimens, but here's just kind of a little, how do you use one, why does it work? That would be a good thing to review. And there's actually a key in the study guide that we put together to take you to class. So what class of arthropod is this? Boom. It's a fairly simple key to use. So that should hopefully be a no-brainer. And then we go on to talk about some kind of basic developmental stuff, growth and metamorphosis. Anything in the study guide is going to be considered kind of primary importance. So if it was important enough for me to write it down and edit it and make copies, you can bet there's going to be some questions on the test about it. All right, just hint, hint. And then finally, it winds up here with the different types of metamorphosis. Again, that would be stuff that the student would want to know cold. I guess that was easier to cover than I thought. It's pretty straightforward. Let me do a little, just a quick little pinning demo, just show you how simple this is. So I have some, 2 insects were good enough to give up their lives for this demonstration today. You guys are all in awe. Does anyone have like a moral problem with taking life on any level?
My daughter does, frankly, that's why we're focusing on the photo.
Does she ride in cars?
She was in tears at the thought of sticking a bug in the bag and watching it die, so.
Well, you don't have to watch
Well,
it.
I know.
You put it in the freezer and you go watch TV.
I don't want to stick a pin through a bug. It was, yeah, she was mortified.
I think this is a great, I think this is a great life lesson.
She loves watching bugs.
I understand that. I personally love insects myself. Here's the thing you have to know about insects. They're not like cats and dogs. There's not a whole lot of personal attachments going on here. Yes, it's a living thing, so we don't want them to feel pain. We pop in the freezer, they kind of go to sleep. They're cold-blooded, right? So it's kind of like the bugs outside in the winter right now. They have no idea what's going on. That being said, if you do have a live collected specimen, fresh out of the freezer, nice and pliable, okay? So when we're talking about people crushing things, I mean, everyone see this is nice and pliable, right? This is not going to crush. You put a pin right through it. The thorax, the region of the body right behind the head, this is where all the legs attach to the body. This is where all the muscles are at. That's the place you want to put the pin through. And the pinning guide does give some examples of where exactly the pin goes and that kind of thing. And I've done this a few times, so I'm pinning into my hand. Although, of course, setting something down on styrofoam and pinning into that would be smarter if you're beginning here. And you want to put the pin through about, you want about a quarter of the pin, quarter to a third of the pin on top of the specimen. The reason for that is so you can actually pick these things up afterwards. A lot of beginners, the first thing they'll do is they pin it all the way to the hilt like that, and then you can never pick this thing up and move it. It's you kind of don't have any room for your finger, so leave a little room for your finger. And you want to kind of go straight through the insect, not like on a 45-degree angle, so the thing is more or less straight up and down. And then you can put it into a pinning block. And if you want to get fancy, there's people that sell them made out of balsa wood for a few bucks. I've been using this for probably the last 12 years. 2 pieces of styrofoam taped together, so it's thick enough to accommodate the pin. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Now this would be, if you leave it like this, so the bigger the bug, usually the longer they take to dry. This is a large insect, right? This is a Madagascar hissing cockroach. So it's not local, wouldn't count in the collection. But you probably have to leave this thing for a good 2 or 3 weeks until it dries out, the muscles kind of bind up, turn into beef jerky, if you will. And then this thing will be hard as a board. You can pick it up, you can move it. It's going to stay exactly the way you left it. If you want to get fancy, so again, this is where the tiebreaker comes in. Anything you do while they're soft and pliable, you can spread them out, you can move the legs, you can adjust the antennae, you can make them look very lifelike. So again, if you want to take a look at an awesome beetle box, these things are like spread out, they look like they're ready to grab you. Again, that's icing on the cake, not necessary, but if your kid's interested and wants to make a bug collection, thinks it's kind of fun, I would encourage them to experiment with that, spread the wings out, spread the legs out. And that's as simple as just taking additional pins, and of course it helps if you're like sitting down and not jiggling in front of people. But you can essentially, kind of take a pin, swing a leg out, secure it, and there you go. So I do have one here that's already done. That's a bald-faced hornet, and you can see there I just took a couple extra little pieces of styrofoam, put those to prop the wings up, spread the legs out with some additional pins, and this thing's dry now. It's going to look awesome as soon as you take the pins out. So that's kind of how that's done. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Sort of before you pin it, when it comes out of the freezer, you just said that they were sort of sleeping. Are they going to wake up as they defrost like they would in the winter?
If you don't leave them in the freezer long enough, yes, they will.
Oh, but if you leave them long enough, it's colder than
So
when they're
leave it for about
so they'll be
4 days.
out like a light. Okay.
Yeah, it depends. Some insects are pretty
Yeah, I'm
cold.
right there with you.
Yeah, and the first thing they do is like,
That's another one of those kind of beginner things that happens. Usually the first time a kid makes an insect collection, it kind of comes to life on them, and they have these pin specimens that are, and that's where your daughter is going to have nightmares, okay, so don't let that happen. If you keep things in the freezer for, more than a couple days, there's a few insects that are very cold hardy, and I've had things wake up after being in the freezer for a week, but that's pretty unusual. Usually, probably about half the things one night, they're done. There's maybe another 20–30% that can go a couple days, but there's very few species that they've been in the freezer for 4 or 5 days. They're not coming out.
So when in doubt, leave them in the deep freezer for like a week and you're fine.
You leave it a week, you'll be good. Right. Yeah.
Do you have any tips for dead bugs that are found? Not those that are alive that can be preserved?
Yeah, there are methods to relax them, and there's a 4-H pamphlet specifically that talks about that, that's provided on the website for you. But boiling water is one of the easiest ways for most things. Yes?
Just back to the official
Yes.
bug sheet. You have termites as being
Ooh, what?
you don't have Isoptera down as one of the insect
Oh, yeah,
orders
yeah.
that we need to know?
Isoptera died. That doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
Entomologists,
So,
they're cockroaches.
so termites are cockroaches.
They're cockroaches.
This is what I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
No more Isoptera.
Isoptera's going. There was a great scientific paper that was published that was called Death of Isoptera. This is a very rare, unusual thing that an entire order disappears. But that is what happened with Isoptera. Yeah.
So, to that point, do you have like a gold source of information where the correct or accurate is tests?
The study guide.
Yeah, but it links to a lot of other links.
It does.
Okay, and then it says, oh, there's lots of other links. So we kind of stick to what's in the information in those links, we're safe. Because I found a lot of information that's okay, just go online. Well, something.
If you use the study guide as the primary source, the reason that we're linking to other places, again, is because I just didn't have time to build all these into the study guide. It takes a lot of time. That is the ultimate goal, is to expand the study guide and not have all these external links. But if you take everything in the study guide as God's truth, and the reason we're linking to other sites is to get information on other things. So when you're talking about classification, use the study guide. The reason we're linking to other sites to talk about subterranean termites, for instance, would be because we want you to know about their biology, their behavior, that kind of thing. So classification is very hairy with insects. I mean, there's roughly 1 million described species of insects that are known to science, and people suspect that there are probably 5 to 10 to 30 million, depending on who you talk to. There's a lot of bugs out there, right? And so classification is constantly evolving and changing as new specimens get described and brought into the fold. People's ideas change.
We're going to make practice tests for our insects, just to try to help them with their knowledge base. Like, what kind of things should we be concentrating? What kind of questions?
So again, study guide is kind of that's the primary stuff to focus on. We're hoping to. Here's a teaser, or a spoiler alert. We haven't written the test yet, so whatever we say today may or may not be true. We think this is true based on the best of our knowledge. But the goal is to try to make approximately 25% of the test straight out of the study guide. And this is only 15 pages of material, so it should be pretty easy to have that stuff cold. The other stuff we link to, we'll try to probably take a question or 2 or 3 out of those various links, but because it's not content that we generated and not content that we, in all cases, 100% agree with, we're going to try to minimize, there'll be questions about it, but it's not going to be like half the test is this one link, and we didn't know what to do. Did that help a little bit? So for making a practice test, yeah, how would you do that?
So I'm thinking like habitats versus some other aspect of the specimen. Any kind of facet. Is it all fair game, or?
If you look up a lot of these, so we listed specific groups, specific classes, specific orders, specific species that we want you to be familiar with. A lot of those, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Any link you click on about termites is going to tell you these are social insects. They have kings and queens. They produce thousands of eggs. They have workers. So you're going to find a lot of the same material. And so if you go to a link, what they're talking about, try to take the big points, the big picture stuff, and that is going to be this. We're going to try not to make questions about minutia, because that's where the errors are going to happen, and the different links will most likely disagree. It's going to be big pictures. That's the goal, is to have big picture stuff.
Yeah, like the things listed, we can ask about ecosystem services, huge ecological impacts they have, social insects, we can ask about specific things that each cast may do, stuff like that.
Conservation status, that stuff changes, you know,
Yes.
fairly often. Is there somewhere where this is the you know, conservation status that you're gonna be using?
Well, yeah, so if you look at, and I'm a pest management guy, so we don't, the things I deal with, there is no conservation status to worry about. So I'm not totally up on that, but yeah, so there's, you know, there's differences between threatened and endangered and blah, 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 blah. It's not, again, we're gonna try not to nitpick. Basically, is this a species that, that conservation is directed towards? Yes or no kind of a thing? Do you know the concept? So if you look at this, the species listed here, there's things like black-legged tick. These are the things that transmit Lyme disease. They're super common. They're all over the place. Their range is just blowing up. They're taking over the Midwest by storm. In case you didn't know that, look out. It's coming. So if we ask, is the black-legged tick an endangered species? I mean, hopefully this would be a pretty straightforward kind of, if you know anything about the species, we're not going to try to do like gotcha questions with that minor kind of stuff. Is this threatened or is it endangered? What about in Ohio? I mean, it's not. The goal is not to be like that. But if it is a species that's threatened, we may ask questions about why, what would you do to bring it back, what kind of conservation efforts would make most sense, you know, multiple choice kind of questions. Would you plant more trees to help the species? Would you create more wetlands to help the species? That kind of a thing. You need to know a little bit about what the species needs are. If it's a thing that needs a specific host plant, you would want to know that. Yeah, thereabouts.
So, like, sure.
Yeah, well, there's, I mean, just from, okay, so the first page of this, is this called the study? The event description. So, yeah. There's actually, we could probably, without sweating, come up with 100 questions just based on this content. I mean, there's more there than you would think. Well, okay, so me as a board certified entomologist came in new to the event last year, and I was going around to the different stations taking the test. And I felt pretty good about 90% of it, but I was like, I don't know that. Why would a kid need to know that? It's either super minutia or I found a couple errors. So this is just redesign it, doing it different. I hope so.